Greetings, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. I am Diana Clarion, and this is the Sunday stream, at least until I come up with a better name for it. And I have just discovered that I am streaming through myself here, so let's do something about that. All right, that's a little bit better. Last week, if you remember, we were doing a stream on Lesbian Erasure. Is it a real thing? And unfortunately, a lightning bolt hit a power line near here, and I lost power. And the stream went down very quickly and suddenly, and we didn't get to finish what we were talking about. And a couple people had asked, why don't you do a part 2? So this is here what it is. So last episode, there was a group of protesters in London at the Pride Parade there who were protesting trans women being included as lesbians. These people did not like that idea because they consider us to be men. And somehow that fits into rape culture. And I had a panel there, and most of them are still here, and we've got a new face as well. So why don't we go through a quick rundown here? We have Kate, also known as Bionic Dance. We have Snarky.
Howdy, y'all.
And we have the Amazing Wonder Lady.
Yay!
And a new face, we have Miriam of Ask Miriam. Why don't you go down the list and tell us a little bit about yourselves. Kate, why not start?
Okay, well, my channel is, as mentioned, called Bionic Dance. I mostly debunk religious videos. I take other people's videos and say, well, that's what you got wrong, and that's what you got wrong, and that's what you got wrong. It's a lot of fun. I try to do it with humor, and I inject some animations into what I do as well. So go subscribe to my channel, or I will have you beaten with a pillowcase full of hammers.
And by the way, I was fangirling all over the place yesterday because a certain Bionic Dance subscribed to my channel. It's like, thank you.
Well, it was an oversight. I thought I already had.
Oh my! Well, I thank you for that. I mean, all the help and support is very much appreciated. All the appreciation is appreciated. How do you like that? Faye, how about a little bit about you?
My channel is Wonder Lady because I have a lot of questions, and I am planning a lot of uncomfortable programming. So if you have very delicate feelings, you might as well not watch because I don't care.
I like it. Snarky, how about a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Mrs. Snarky, and I make videos sometimes. Some of them are kind of good, and I don't know. You be the judge. I'm here because, like, my best friend is anti-ordinary, and she came to me and she told me about this protest that was going on because she lives in London, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that people were saying this, and it sounded to me like either tribalism or something like of the kind. And I just wanted to thank her for bringing this to my attention. And go check out her channel. She's got a great channel, by the way.
Sounds good. And last but not least, the absolutely wonderful Miriam of Ask Miriam. How about a little bit from you?
Thanks for saying I'm wonderful. I'm a Master's of Social Work student in beautiful Kelowna, BC. Pretty new to all of this YouTube stuff. But yeah, I'm a relationship nerd. I have several close trans friends, and so like this topic is quite important to me.
Alrighty then. In the comments of last week's stream, somebody had mentioned a flyer that the lesbian protesters at the Pride had been distributing, and I looked it up, and this is a very, very interesting little thing. Maybe we can start with this. Why get the lead out? Or why get the L out? Sorry about that. Who we are. Get the L Out is a group of lesbian and feminist individuals and organizations opposing the increasingly anti-lesbian and misogynistic LGBT movement and the erasure of lesbians. Okay. Why we protest? We believe that lesbian rights are under attack by the trans movement, and we encourage lesbians everywhere to leave the LGBT and form their own independent movement, as well as to be vocal and take action against the proposed changes to the GRA. I'm not quite familiar with the GRA. I heard somebody sigh. Who was that was sighing?
Me, sorry.
Okay, you know what the GRA is?
Not in particular. It's just this is ringing familiar. That's all.
Okay, because I mean, it's not unusual that other people know more than I do. So, I mean, that's why I have other people around here. Get the L Out believes trans politics, parenthetically, with uncritical support from the LGBT movement, does the following. Promotes the social transition of lesbians, encouraging them to present as straight men, thus favoring the pretense of heterosexuality over lesbianism. This is nothing more than a form of conversion therapy. Promotes the medical transition of lesbians and pushes harmful drugs, parenthetically, untested hormone blockers, Lupron, etc., as well as unnecessary medical practices on perfectly healthy bodies. These are a form of misogynist medical abuse against lesbians. Promotes the rights of heterosexual males who, quote, identify, end quote, as women and lesbians, parenthetically, despite most of them still retaining their male genitals, over the rights of lesbians to choose their sexual partners. This new queer LGBT politics thus coerces lesbians to accept the penis as a female organ and promotes heterosexual intercourse between male and female as a source of lesbians, or as a form of lesbian sex. This is simply a new facet to rape culture and compulsory heterosexuality. There's a bit more here, but why don't we start here? Because this is a lot to chew on.
Well, okay, here's the thing. I have met like one trans person since I moved to San Diego, but back in Seattle, I knew quite a few. And one thing that they left out of this little manifesto of theirs, I knew more than a few male to females who were straight, who wanted guys, not just women,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So, I mean, speaking as a lesbian, I'm like, well, I don't really see this as being like anti-lesbian. It's just weird that they went there with this.
That's another thing. I mean, in the trans community here, I know quite a few. I will call them androphilic trans women. I use that term because it eliminates the two genders that are normally thought of when you say lesbian. You think of woman liking woman, or when you say gay, you think of man liking man. That gets a little confusing when you're starting to talk about trans people. So androphilic is liking men, gynophilic is liking women. Okay, so anyway, I know quite a few androphilic trans women, and they seem to be forgetting about that, as Kate said. Seem to be concentrating on people like me because I am gynophilic. But what I don't get at all is this bit about I'm a man. What? Okay. I still have a lot of us call it my mistake. I'll call it my birth defect. Mainly because $100,000 hasn't fallen out of the sky and into my lap.
Literally.
The surgery is expensive. So what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to sit around and be lonely? Well, I know the Christians would have us do that, but I don't get that. Does anybody else want to chime in?
I want to say something.
Thank you.
I think that like we are okay. I'll talk about a bit about my bias. I'm bi. I've been with a ton of men, and at this point, like I'm mostly sick of them.
Can I blame you?
Anyway, I think we've gotten to a new frontier when it comes to gender. I think that lesbians can be very fixated on keeping their community like 110% female. And they see trans people and they're like, oh my God, they're gonna ruin us. But like, I don't know, I've talked with some people who say that like the T should not be included after LGB because it has to do with gender, not to do with sexual orientation.
I have heard
And you
that
have to
one,
eliminate
yes.
Q as well. I mean, we don't say Q as much, but Q is queer, and there's all kinds of different sorts of queer.
Yep.
And so, I mean, like taking out the T sort of misses the whole kind of point of the acronym, really. I don't know. Another part that was in that what do you want to call it, manifesto, I guess, where they're saying this is part of rape culture and we have to accept the penis as like, well, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, unless you're actually trying to rape somebody, it's not rape culture, right? I mean,
Well,
let's put it this way. If someone shows up and they're like, I'm a male to female transsexual who still has their organs, and they say, do you want to go out? I have the right to say yes or no. And I'm unlikely to be raped if I tell that person no. So
Absolutely.
for my ass.
The thing is, like, the whole Me Too movement has like brought consent to the forefront. I think like we are living in a rape culture. I've had sexual things done to me without my consent. I don't necessarily call it rape, or like in Canada we call it sexual assault. But like it's a reality that a lot of women have to deal with.
I mean, you're not
I'm with
wrong,
you there.
but I'm just like that. They're pointing out this particular thing and saying this is part of rape culture.
Yeah,
and
that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And of course, I think rape culture hasn't touched me that much because I am kind of tall and scary. I've had a lot of people tell me, wow, I'm so attracted to Kate, but I'm terrified to go up there. She's going to bite my throat out. And I'm like, really? You think me? I'm the same size as Xena. And I guess I'm a little, but still inside, I'm just a little kid.
I've experienced like rape culture. I mean, you know, this is not it to me.
Yeah,
it just doesn't. It doesn't fit the definition to me.
Yeah, you do have a story about that, Snarky. I don't know if you want to go into detail about that here, but I'll let you decide what it is that you want to say about that.
Well, I mean, pretty much any job that I've had somebody remark about my tits or my butt or whatever it is they wanted to do to me, or make some kind of reference to their genitals. Like, I don't give a fuck if you have a dick. Like,
thank you.
So, yeah, it's a thing, but I don't understand how it's connected to this. Not everything is rape culture. You can't just throw it all in one basket as a definition. You have to be specific.
Yeah, has anybody really defined what rape culture is? I don't get out of the house much, so I really don't know everything that everyone has said. I mean, you folks here, do you have a clear idea of what those who are bandying the term rape culture are talking about?
Not really. I mean, rape culture sounds like there's got to be a rape community out there to have it. And it seems weird that they would have these rape conventions or like a get together on meetup.com. Hey, let's talk about rape. I don't see that happening.
It's not necessarily anything like that. It's that the culture allows for certain things, certain people get a pass to making comments that are inappropriate or abusive or unwanted. Like,
it also means that we blame the victim.
Yes.
yeah.
And part of it has impacted comedy and comedians because, like, someone will say something along the lines of, yeah, I was back at my apartment having sex with this girl and she was kind of loud and the neighbors complained. So when I went back to her, I said, look, don't turn this rape into a murder.
Oh,
wow.
no.
That's horrible.
That's what they're freaking talking about. And the fact is, like, people are like, ah, ha, ha. And yeah, okay, I have a dark sense of humor, so, like, you know, I'm not going to sit there and be like, okay, I have to protest this comedian, but at the same time, it's like, didn't anyone feel uncomfortable with that?
A little.
You know, you might laugh at it, but at the same time, part of you cringes. And also, as an MMO player, like, anytime someone went into the battlegrounds, got annihilated and came back, he talked about his butt being sore.
Okay, there's an interesting reference
There's like
there.
a whole
Yes.
bunch of things like, oh, I got raped or I raped this person, and everyone would be like, ah ha ha ha. So, I mean, in a way, I mean, forgive me, I'm just a little bit of a, like, language person, but, like, the word is actually also changing meaning, like, additional definitions. None of them are pretty. But the idea that people can just be like, yeah, I raped that person, it's like, don't you have any shame for using that word? Can't you use another one?
Yeah.
And then they turn around and go, oh, you're Sally sensitive. What the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah, they do.
But it's
No,
like,
I've seen that happen with a lot of words. I mean, I've got a couple of stories, but that would take us way off topic. So,
right. But I mean, I think that's what the deal is. It's also like, you know, it's what was she wearing?
Yeah.
And of course she's when that teenager got drunk, passed out at a thing, and like a whole sporting team took turns on her. Like, everyone, including her school, was just like, well, she got drunk at a party. She was just a teenager.
She was asking for it.
I think I remember that story.
For it, blah, blah, blah. This is actually what she wanted. Well, you can't really ask a passed out person for consent.
No.
Therefore, they cannot give it.
Right, and therefore it's rape. And it was this huge thing a few years ago about this. And, you know, not many people had sympathy for her. And that's part of the whole issue. Now, if you want to apply that to trans, I don't see the connection. The only way I can see anything is, what do you call it? Someone, you know, it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, but you take off the pants and it's not a duck.
But even then, I mean,
but like,
it sounds like their point is that trans people are really men who want to like rape lesbians by pretending to. It's almost like they think trans people are drag queens who are going undercover to rape lesbians.
That's exactly the thing. That's exactly it. They think of trans people as this perverse person that they're buying into a narrative that's nothing but propaganda. ContraPoints did a very good video about that. I'll search for it for you.
But what about trans men who transition to women who pick up men and they haven't had surgery either? That complaint has been around for a long time too. It's the same kind of complaint. It's like, yeah, okay, the transition's not complete, but what's your issue really?
I mean, there's certainly guys who've said like, "Oh, you've made me unintentionally into a fag" or something, where they're their masculinity is challenged. They don't want to become homosexual accidentally, is usually the way I hear it.
I heard that.
Yeah.
I heard that complaint too.
Accidentally.
I'm accidentally gay because I accidentally was turned on by a trans person. What's wrong with them? It's not accidentally anything.
And two, there's the, I just looked it up. It's called it's a idea called autogynephilia.
Oh, I know that one all too well.
So
I don't know that.
What is the term, but I don't remember.
There's basically two. Well, I'm sure Aunt Diana can tell you.
Yeah, to my memory, this autogynephilia thing is men getting off on the thought of being women.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, and some of them going ahead and making the transition on that basis. And let me tell you something, with everyone I've talked to, and there are quite a few of them. I mean, even in a city that's not all that large, such as Pittsburgh, there are quite a few of us here. All of us have stated that throughout our lifetimes, as we have seen ourselves, we have been, and I'm speaking from the male to female viewpoint here because it's the one I know, we have been girls, women, all our lives. The problem is that nobody else figured that out, mainly because of the way we looked. And the problem we have is convincing people, or not so much convincing, but demonstrating, yeah, I have been the woman I say I am, even when I looked like a boy, even when I looked like a man.
So I'm gonna ask a question.
Sure.
What does it mean to be a woman?
I don't know. What does it mean to be a woman? All I know is what it means to be me. And when I compare me to what I see out there, when I'm talking to you, when I'm talking to Kate, Snarky, Faye, and that's I compare. That's interesting. I'm getting a feedback for some reason.
That was my fault. That was my fault.
Oh, okay, no problem. But when I compare those, woman seems to fit better than man does.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what I've got to go on. I mean, I don't know,
Woman
Miriam,
makes sandwiches.
what your experience is. I cannot know because it's yours. Same for the rest of you ladies. Yeah. Really, all I know is me.
It's kind of like, I mean, have you ever listened to a song and then you listen to another similar song and you don't really like the other one for no good reason and you can't define it? You don't have the words to say, this is why I didn't like it. Well, I'm sure it's like I try to imagine what it's like to be a guy and I can't do it. I look at men and how they behave. I look at women, how we behave. I see a definite difference, but don't ask me to put it into words. I'm not sure I could.
Yeah, and there's the point that you mentioned, and thank you, the behavior aspect. I guess that's one of the biggest things that came up for me is when I looked around at the boys and how I behaved, how they behaved, they were not at all the same. I mean, what I did that resembled what they did was, it felt like coercion, basically. You're going to do it this way, and that's it. I would have rather done it very differently. But again, that whole visceral thing, I cannot know.
Well, and I think that another part of the problem is when people think about LGBTQ, WTF, BBQ, whatever the fuck, because how many times do they add another letter, right? But like whenever people look at that who are outside of the queer community, all they can think about is the sex part. It's like, oh, you're a lesbian, so you want to lick pussy, basically. It's like, well, yeah, but I'm also like more attracted to the woman. And it's not just about the sex. Like, this is who I'm going to fall in love with. It's like my cousin Adam is about to marry his boyfriend. And I don't even care about how they have sex, or even if they do. It's just I see them loving each other, and I'm like, well, go for it. But I mean, when I think about like lesbians that are not me, because I don't have this erasure fear, thinking, oh, these are just guys who want to like rape lesbians who are like, because they're pretending to be women or something. I'm like, but what if they're actually falling in love with someone?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is why I prefer to speak of partner preference over sexual orientation, because let's face it, I mean, no matter how young and up and ready for it you are, if you'll excuse the expression, you can't fuck constantly. You've got to stop and eat at some point.
Speak for yourself.
And hey, I'm old, Kate. I just turned 61, so I mean, with this is an interesting thing here. With me now, a lot of this stuff just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I'm not thinking so much about sex as I am about table talk or pillow talk or whatever. The person, the mind, is primary to me. I mean, sure, I'd like to go back to my days, 25, 30, where I could go at it, 16 hours and, come back for more. It just isn't it anymore.
16 hours?
I have
Memories.
a couple of stories about someone I really miss, but that's another story entirely. If you're watching, I miss you, Terry. I really do. Anyway.
Gosh, I hope none of my exes are watching my videos.
Oh, come on. You can count on it.
Well, it's funny for me because my ex-husband is so steeped in the atheist world, and now I've kind of been brought into this world, and I'm like, I feel like a bit of an intruder sometimes. I am an atheist, but yeah.
Intruder, red alert.
Exterminate.
Atheists who are quote unquote spiritual. I mean, there are some who are. There are some people who are like, you're not a real atheist. And that really bothers me because it's like, mind your own beeswax when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, like spirituality, you can be an atheist and believe in sorcery if you like. I know a flat earther atheist. I mean, it's just about whether or not you believe in any gods. You can believe in anything else supernatural, just not a god, and still be an atheist.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's just weird.
How does Aaron put it? You don't have to be rational in order to be an atheist? Or something like that? And by the way, he is as big a sweetie as they told me he was, but
oh yeah, have you met him in person?
Not in the flesh. We spoke last week on Dr. Jones' show. He's going to be coming back next week as well, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him because the off-camera persona, even over a link such as this, is not at all what you saw in the videos. Yeah, there's a real person in there who's compassionate and everything.
Oh, I'm sure
he's a really nice guy in person. I mean, like, he's so much fun to hang out with. His family is an absolute blast too. So yeah, it's funny. Like there was sort of a costume night at one of the conventions I went to, and seeing Aaron Ra dressed up as a Klingon. Hey,
I think I saw a photograph of that.
Anyway.
But we're getting a little off topic here. Yeah. That's all right. But how do the other folks in the chat feel about that? I haven't looked at the side chat. I don't know if there are any questions coming or.
Not yet. Not that I've seen.
All I can tell is that, or I should say, the observation is it's almost like the lesbians who are talking this way and making a fuss about this, they kind of remind me of the third wave feminists,
Mhm.
which, by the way, I am a feminist, and I have a lot to say about third wavers because I don't think they're healthy. I really don't think they're like mentally healthy. And I'm not
Define third wave feminism.
third wave feminism, the ones that say boys are not allowed to join the group.
Silly.
Yeah, they're like, no, boys can't be feminists. It's like, yeah, they can.
How I mean, feminism, if it has a mission, is probably what? Acceptance, equality? How the hell do you exclude men from that?
Exactly.
I mean, if they're
That's
being
why I
told
have
you guys are
issues.
fuckers, you guys are just royal jerks. I mean, the only way for third wave feminism, as you've described it, to succeed is if women literally take over the earth, like some bad guy organization in a bad James Bond movie take over the earth.
Have you ever read the Scum Manifesto?
Oh, by Valerie Solanas. Yes, I
Yes.
have a copy of it in my house.
Yeah,
You
that
do
was pretty
realize
much
she
the
wrote
plan.
that- You do realize she wrote that from inside a mental hospital, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
She tried to shoot Andy Warhol, didn't she?
She was a charming lady and a little violent and had an interesting personal history, and I'm going to go over that in great detail
Awesome.
because
Yeah, I was going to say this whole thing sounds like a great thing to split off. Not that we can't talk about it here, but into a show of its own, where we can go into detail about this. I know that a couple of years ago, my latest ex quit talking to me. She got kind of pissed off at me. I was in a group conversation, and I had said we were talking about feminism. I had said something to the effect of, I would really prefer that when someone talked to me, they look at my eyes rather than my rack. And she private messaged me with, "We have to talk." Started throwing Jermaine Greer at me, Eleanor Burkett, all about how can you even begin to think that you are a woman, you are a parody of a woman, just putting falsies in your bra for a couple of years doesn't make it. And
oh, really?
I don't know if she's changed her ideas about that, because I say we haven't spoken in a couple of years, and if she's comfortable that way, that's fine. I hope you're happy. I really do.
Yeah, but from someone who is I started out very flat chested, and I had a bit of a habit of having a lot of padding thanks to my grandmother and my mother insisting on it. I no longer have to do that, but a woman is not her breasts.
Exactly. And in the chat, Frustrated Atheist said that that's another reason to love you, Wonder Lady.
Yay! Thank you, Frustrated. But like,
good to see you, Russ.
Diana, I consider you to be a woman.
Yes.
Well, thank you, dear.
You are not the sum of your parts. This doesn't change whether you are post-op or pre-op or anything else like that. Your attitudes are definitely female. Your concerns are female. And you've had the unique perspective of being able to say, yes, I have lived for a while as a man. I mean, you said when I was trying to do the boy thing to me all the time. And it's like, yeah, I get it. But it also means that you can bring something unique to the table that I haven't heard before.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually appreciate talking to trans people about these difficult topics because, like, I think perspective on, like, whether or not I am being marginalized because of how I'm saying something, or is it just because I'm a chick? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to joke around, and this is a definite joke here. I will say, I know that men are assholes. I was trying to be one for half a century.
Oh, I love that.
Look, y'all, I really hate to leave, but I'm going to have to go.
No, it's fine, honey.
I'm sorry, but
I hate to see you go, but I know you have a good reason to do so.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can chat this week.
Yes, I look forward to it. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have fun. Don't
Take
get
care,
run
dear.
over.
Be good. Okay, yeah, and
Then there
let's
were 4.
Well,
say again, please.
I said, and then there were 4.
Yes, Agatha Christie. Hello.
Miriam, I have a question though. Like,
Yeah.
what do you have third wave feminism in Canada?
Yeah.
And what are they like? Are they like what I said, or are they different?
I had to ask you to remind me about it because I'm not sure which wave of feminism we're on right now. Are we on 4th wave?
We're on 3.
I have no idea.
I think.
Um,
Kate, do you know?
Well, that's the thing though, is I think that like these waves are separate from each other. We're like we still probably have first and second wave feminism. It's just we've also got the third wave feminists, right?
Right.
So I can't really say we're on any of them. I mean, you could ask me which one's most recent, but we have the numbers to figure that one out.
Yeah.
So
Because I'm more of a second waver.
Yeah, I grew up during the second wave, the Gloria Steinem wave, if you will. That is the one I know and love.
Sorry to interrupt. Wikipedia is telling me that we're on the 4th wave now, which began around 2012.
Oh, and what is that? What is?
Yeah, I was going to ask what that was
wave?
about.
yeah, does it describe it?
It's telling me that it's defined by technology.
Whatever.
Issues that 4th wave feminists focus on include street and workplace harassment, campus sexual assault, and rape culture.
Yeah.
I hope they have a blue link on that one.
They do.
Oh, good.
So what I have to ask though, these third wave feminists in Canada, do they apologize a lot for what they do?
Oh!
This, ladies and gentlemen, is why I love having Kate here.
Yeah, we needed that.
And everyone in between.
It kind of sounds like though the lesbians that are protesting trans are kind of like third waivers. Like, oh well, since you are not one of us, you're not allowed to join the club.
It's so exclusionary. I mean, that's part of the whole TERF acronym.
It is. I mean, it's not very fair, and it's very bigoted, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I'm not comfortable with that.
I wanna give a little example.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm polyamorous, and
Okay.
I've hung out with a fair number of polyamorous people. And one person I met, she used to identify as a lesbian, and at some point several years ago, she's like, I kind of want to try like being with a guy. And she told me that her lesbian community shunned her. They're like, oh my god, you're like in bed with the enemy, literally.
That is, okay, that's weird. I mean, every person is a person unto himself, herself, whatever self. So what's the problem? I mean, I got shook up a little while ago. Well, not a little while, 10 years ago. I actually fell for a guy. And I'm sitting back and saying, wait a minute, am I not as lesbian as I thought I was? And I came to the conclusion, okay, maybe not. Maybe I thought I was full bore, I hate men. But I still call myself a lesbian because when I'm thinking about someone with whom I would want to spend time, my first thoughts are of women. It would take a really, really special guy to make it across that bridge. I mean, Ron did it, and unfortunately, it didn't pan out. But it was an experience for me anyway. It was a good experience overall.
Well, and I mean, not every lesbian, but a lot have that story of, well, I tried this guy and I tried that guy and I tried that guy until finally I figured out I'm not interested in guys. So, I mean, it's happened. I'm sure there had to be something about those not quite right guys that was at least a little attractive, not completely repulsive. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I remember a few years ago, I had a roommate who, I think he identifies as a straight guy, and he was dating a woman, and he told me that his girlfriend identified as a lesbian who dates men. And I was like, like, you know.
Okay, if you go to the dictionary definition, that doesn't make sense. But then again, as Dr. Jones always says, words have meaning rather than, I'm sorry, words have usage rather than inherent meaning. So maybe she had something going with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking, it just came to my mind. One of the things that my ex was throwing at me is, you've never had a period. You've never worried about becoming impregnated after sex, having forgotten your pill or something like that. But I'm thinking about a girlfriend of mine, say 25 years ago. She had not had a period after age 29. She had no chance of becoming pregnant after age 29 because she had had an hysterectomy. Was she still a woman? It's a rather rhetorical question, but it's one that could be posed to these folks who state that sort of thing.
Somehow, though, I suspect that part of what your ex was, I'm sorry, I missed it if that was an ex of yours or just a friend, but was trying to say is that the experiences didn't happen. Right? Like it's not so much you didn't have the equipment for it. It's more a matter of you never felt what we felt.
And you are absolutely correct, by the way.
Okay.
And I understand that. I guess what I think I'm doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, I want to be corrected, is that the experiences, in my view, go beyond that. There are things that are not related to the sex act, as we I think started to discuss here with what's the word I'm looking for? Discrimination. Discrimination on the basis of sex, or the catcallers, who are not necessarily looking up your skirt. Let's not worry about those that do, at least not yet. But hey, babe, that sort of thing. That isn't necessarily related to what Melody was talking about at the time. But I think that they are valid, or do I have it wrong? I'm truly asking that.
You think what is valid?
The outside the bedroom experiences, such as the workplace discrimination, such as the, if you want to call them, the verbal assaults, the catcalling, etc., on the streets. I mean, are those as valid as the pain of a period or the fear of becoming pregnant, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I know someone who, she discovered at, the age of 16 that she does not have a uterus. I guess this happens sometimes, and, she's, devastated she can't have a child. But, does that make her less of a woman? I don't think so.
And I really hope that being female is more than just what I experience. Because that means society cannot change in order for women to still exist in the future.
Yep.
Yeah, and
it's bullshit if you ask me, because I can't tell you, it's like, okay, pain of a period. Well, some women don't get their periods.
Some women don't have pain associated with their periods.
Exactly. I'm one of them. Some people don't have boobs. Some people don't. But it's. I think it must be. I really do think it's the way you identify yourself, because I can't even tell you how many times I've dealt with a guy saying, "You're more of a man than I am." And it's like, just because I'm assertive and you're a I didn't say something nice, but I'm not going to use that language on Diana's channel. that doesn't make me less of a woman or you more of a woman. You know,
So it's where the closest I have to that is like I was on Facebook. Now my hair is actually curly as fuck. You have no idea because I got a lot of Jewish and African going on in my ancestry. But I use
that must be cute.
no, it's not. I look like an explosion in a Velcro factory. It sucks. So I take a flat iron to it, right? And I replaced mine like a year ago. And it was so much better than what I was using. So I went on Facebook and raved about it. And someone said to me, Kate, that's probably the most feminine thing I've ever heard you say. And I was like, okay, how do these people think of me now? So I don't know.
Well, personally, I think of you as Kate, and I rather like what I think of. I mean, you're a wonderful person. So let's, take it from there.
So you say. You haven't seen the real me.
Well, I've been called at least a couple of times a man with a vagina. And like there's one particular crazy trip I went on across the US where I orchestrated a threesome, and I told a friend of mine, and he said, You're a man with a vagina. You have the sex drive of a man and the emotions of a woman. I was like, okay.
Okay. Well, that means that there's a little of the testosterone going on there, because testosterone drives libido in both sexes, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I've had my study in endocrinology back when I was at uni the second time. I was going to go somewhere with that, and I forgot where I was going to go. So does someone want to pick up?
Well, I mean, there's one thing I've always wondered about, like testosterone. Isn't there going to be a point where it's like theory proved osterone instead of test?
I love that.
In science, you never prove anything. You only disprove.
Still, you know what I mean.
Or you support your hypothesis.
It's one of those words that makes my brain go, something's wrong here. It's kind of like what you were saying was gynophilia. I'm like, well, I'm not into guys. But seriously, it's like anyone whose last name ends in man, like Silverman or something. I always go, Silverman, like they're a superhero. I can't help it. This is what my brain does, even if my mouth doesn't say it. Every now and then I have to say it or I'll fucking burst.
Yeah, but that brought something to my mind just now, is the way I'm looking at things. With you three, I don't know exactly where you're coming from. I have the training in the sciences. I'm approaching this as a scientist, not a sociologist. So I suppose that there is going to be a major difference in the way I look at it, as opposed to, let's say, the protesters, as they might, because the rhetoric anyway sounds more sociological than scientific. And yes, sociologists, I know you're a soft science, but we'll talk about that later. But there again, you have the difference in viewpoint. How about you guys? I mean,
well,
where are you coming from?
All my training is the science fiction, so I can't help there.
Okay.
Science, never mind.
Oh, come on.
What? I'm just saying I'm a total geekatron when it comes to... Never mind.
I knew there was a reason
It's
I liked
so
you.
cute.
Anyway.
And I lost it again. Here's what happens when you get old. The memory is the second thing to go, and I forget what the first is.
Aww. Oh my goodness. What were you saying, Miriam?
Oh, I was just going to talk a bit about my background, because, like, I've done a lot of different stuff. I have an undergrad in political science and environmental studies. I wanted to be a journalist, and then I decided not to. I got a master's in environmental studies, which didn't really go anywhere, and then I was doing some, like, gender studies, and now I'm in social work. So I'm a social scientist, through and through. And I like science. I think it's much needed. But I don't like it when certain disciplines are like, we are science because science is the only legitimate thing.
Oh, right. Don't get me wrong. I mean, my viewpoint is that the other viewpoints outside of science, as people think of science, as I thought of it in the lab, are just as valid.
Oh, I wasn't criticizing you. I'm just saying.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, they add to the discussion, and it's not a one-sided discussion by any means.
Right. I guess my background is I have a bachelor's in literature. I also took more credits than I needed to in history and psychology. And I've done like other studies such as like anatomy and physiology for the sake of it. And I was the assistant to the head of the physics department. So there you go.
Well, if you want, like, I wasn't totally kidding when I said that my training is in science fiction, because I did do a little bit of film school and I did some animation school, worked on a couple of indie flicks, and then did like video games for a while. And if you've watched my channel at all, which you really should be doing, you've seen my animations on my channel. So really, that's where my training is. I'm an artist, a visual, like, video artist. So.
Yeah, to fill
Which
in,
I totally respect that.
Yeah, to fill in, I had said that my training was in the sciences. Specifically, I took a degree in neuroscience, University of Pittsburgh, 1996. I had wanted to go on to a PhD, but unfortunately, ill health stepped in and sort of flushed that one down the toilet. So, yeah, maybe I'm the hardest of the hard scientists around in this room. But I learned a great deal, and I had wanted to study affective disorders because I do suffer major depression. But were I to go back, were I to have the chance to go to the lab now, I'd love to study the biological basis of gender. So, there's the fill-in for mine.
Cool.
You ever notice how people are always suffering from depression? Isn't anyone just mildly annoyed by it?
I'd love that. Happily, sometimes that is the case. Not this week, but
I have depression.
Okay. I don't know. I think I have to wonder if a lot of us do, if the incidence of affective disorders increases along with intellectual capacity, if you want to put it that way.
That is a recent study, and they are talking. It used to be assumed that people with depression were stupid because they check out and things like that. But recently, there's been some work along the lines of like it seems to be that if someone has intellectual capacity plus that particular chemical imbalance in the brain, that serotonin and all the other stuff, that what do you call it? Because intelligent people tend to think things out, and usually the logical conclusion is not a cheerful one, and that kind of exasperates the situation. But am I wrong, Miriam?
No, I don't think you're wrong.
Okay.
Well,
if I am, please tell me, because I really want to know. I've been having this conversation for 20 years.
I wish I knew more about this stuff. Like, there's been, like, in this social work program, there's, like, a million things that we could cover, and we don't.
Right.
But I think that, like, I know, like, I've gone through my own bouts of depression. I know people with it. I know people with anxiety. I think that, like, so I'm the daughter of social workers, and I'm very close with my mom, and we talk about this stuff, and she says that, like, so-called mental illness is much more pervasive than we think. And like,
I believe that.
It's quite like depression and anxiety are just as normal as like being happy and like maybe being mildly annoyed or, you know, like we're trying, like, you know, I know like in the States it's all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but like happiness, you're not going to be happy all the time. Like it's normal to be pissed off.
Well, that's why it's the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, but a lot of Americans do get that kind of confused with I have the right to be happy.
Yeah, well, I'm saying what it is, not what it should be.
Hey, I'm on your side, sweetheart.
Yeah. But I mean, I look around at the United States and I'm fairly convinced that it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of flabbiness.
Yeah, there is that too.
But no, I mean, I've had my own trials with depression, but it was actually literally because of the weather. I was living in Seattle for 20 years. Seasonal affective disorder is a thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's a reason Seattle has a high suicide rate. The clouds will eventually kill you. Right?
Is there a genetic component to that? Because
I don't know.
bright sunlight kills me. I would love to be in Seattle.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I'm living in Southern California right now, and I walk around on a typical bright sunny day, and I can feel my spirits soaring. And I'm like, I want to, well, it's kind of counterintuitive, but I want to go back inside and get on my computer and do something creative, damn it. Right? Because my computer is my medium for my art. But, I mean, I feel literally inspired while I'm walking around under a blue sky. And actually, it's funny because I keep telling people blue is my favorite color. They're like, but blue is so depressing. I'm like, no, it's not. It's the color of a sunny day and Superman's uniform and Luke's lightsaber. Come on, blue is one of the best colors ever. Happy fucking happy. So I don't know.
I know where you're coming from, Kate. I'm the same way. I also have the sad going on as well as the major depression. And you get out on a sunny day and it's euphoric.
Yeah, you're floating. Totally.
And I wish that every day could be sunny, and well, for many reasons I do, but you know, that way maybe I'd be a little more productive than I am now. But at least I'm a little more productive now than I was, say, 10, 15 years ago. I like that. I saw a question in the side chat. Who was it that was wondering my take on Klinefelters? Let me look up and find the.
Okay.
Mark Cesar. And as far as I'm concerned, does everybody know what Klinefelter syndrome is?
No, I know I've heard the name, but
it's a sex chromosome aneuploidy, where instead of an XX or an XY karyotype, it's XXY. There's an extra X.
I've heard of that. I've heard of that.
And my personal take is I'm not all that familiar with it. I know no one with Klinefelters. All I know is what I read in the newspapers, as Will Rogers would have said. But these are people who simply have a number of chromosomes that isn't the usual. And what they deal with, I don't know how they identify, for example. I don't know what they, how they perceive the world. I'd like to, but it's just not very common, and therefore I really don't know anyone with it. Anyone want to fill in? Or are we starting to run against a sandbar? Because, well, we've already gone an hour. Well, not quite an hour. I think we started 1 or 2 minutes late. I mean, can anyone think of anything to add to this that might?
I've known a few hermaphrodites, but no one with that condition.
Yeah,
really?
I swear someone said that like hermaphrodite is the wrong term now. Like there's something more PC or something. I don't know.
Intersex.
Intersex.
Oh,
okay,
right,
well,
right,
then
right.
I've met a few intersex.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've encountered so many words like that where there was a word and it seemed to be the one everyone used and there was no malice in it, but then all of a sudden that's the worst thing you could call somebody. And it's so frustrating at times. I've even lost friends over it where I was trying to explain, like, look, there was a time when you could call someone Oriental and it was not an insult, right? And
I was just thinking of that.
And I was like, the first time I said that and people gasped in horror, I was like, what? And I said, it's Asian now. And the thing is that, like, I was trying to explain to this friend of mine, I was like, look, back when I was a kid in Vermont, people would say Oriental and there was no malice. And he was like, well, maybe you just didn't see the bigotry. I'm like, dude, I was there and I know how people said it and meant it and reacted to it. And he's like, yeah, well, fuck you, and unfriended me. I'm like, dude, really? Over that? Explaining what my childhood was like, you're unfriending me. All right.
Boo.
I am 61 years old. I grew up in an era when Oriental simply meant East and possibly Southeast Asian. That was it. So a Chinese person would have been of an Oriental extraction. Perhaps a Vietnamese person would have been of an Oriental extraction. When you go, this is me talking here, so take it with a grain of salt. When you go from Oriental to Asian, I'm thinking you kind of lose context because a Siberian person would also be Asian, but there's less of a connection with that East and Southeast Asian thing going on. They're different cultures and things entirely.
Well, and I tried looking up, like, I wanted to see when it had changed, the whole Oriental and Asian thing. And what I ran across was a lot of like forums and articles where people are going, don't call me Oriental. I'm not a rug. I'm not a piece of furniture. Right. Because apparently that's what Oriental means. It's like, oh, it's an Oriental rug. It's like, I don't know. There's a certain kind of rug. I haven't seen one in a very long time, but you get the idea. Is they were saying that like Oriental is for inanimate objects.
Mm-hmm.
And that really brings something to the fore that I hadn't thought of mentioning here yet until you talked about this. The terms that apply to me. I can swear up and down on a stack of copies of God is Not Great that when I was young, I would have been referred to as transgendered. It was a participial adjective. And suddenly, somewhere around the 90s, people started saying, well, it's a verb. You didn't do anything to me to make me this way, so don't refer to me that way. And it became transgender, which, okay, in my somewhat OCD grammatic thing going on in my head, that kind of derails me for a second. Now, okay, I suppose I can get used to it. I mean, if you don't want to hear it, I won't say it. But I don't understand the rationale.
It's probably just some misplaced PC shit.
Because I once brought up something where you would refer to people, I think like you, Kate, is it not, who had this dominant hand over here as left-handed? And this person actually said, that's never been said.
Really?
I will go back over games that Vin Scully called from Dodger Stadium, speaking of a left-handed pitcher. So I don't know where the
well, what did they say?
If you want to talk about erasure, you're erasing history by doing that.
But what is the apparently appropriate term for someone who's left-handed?
I have no idea.
Sinister.
Is it a left-hand person?
Sinister.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's so many things like that. Like, okay, here's one where I'm quite willing to change what I say if someone will fucking well tell me which one is appropriate. Is it midget, dwarf, or little person? Small person, whatever. I don't know. I don't know anymore.
They're all Aunt Peggy.
They're all what?
Relatives of mine. I'm joking.
Oh.
Okay. Oh,
No,
yes.
but
you've
seriously,
spoken of her. I think she's about 3 feet tall.
Oh, well, I've had some people say like, well, that midget and dwarf are actually biologically different, and are also like their morphology is a bit different in some way. But now
Yeah, that is the
apparently,
case.
like the umbrella term is little people. But I got to tell you, I don't like that because it sounds so diminutive, right? Like where it
Yes.
sounds like saying someone is a little person. Oh, you're so little. It sounds like I'm insulting them when I say it, and like no matter
Right.
how sincere I'm being, I feel like I'm being an asshole when I say it. So
Well, you could just ask them, like, hey, how can I refer to you?
I suppose, but I don't know. That seems kind of obnoxious. It's like I've seen people, like I've been hanging out with some of my LGBT friends, and I've seen like wait staff at restaurants go, what is your pronoun to people? And I'm like, wow, that's a bit upfront, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's another one that really derails me. All the new pronouns. Um, Corey Keith and I were talking about that, if I remember correctly, back when Dawn was interviewing Corey. Corey's pronoun is per, which stems from person. Okay. And then you have Z and here, and how many others are there?
I saw an article. Someone was saying there's 76 distinct genders. And I'm like, that's a bit excessive.
That's a lot to remember.
Yeah, and I mean, apparently, like, okay, I was having this, I'll call it a discussion on Jacqueline Glenn's most recent video about like the left wing versus the right wing and who's more extreme and in which way. And people were saying that there's some folks on the extreme left who want you to be like prosecuted for using the wrong pronoun, for misgendering someone.
Oh,
And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, you know what? That's excessive. But also, how are you supposed to know? Unless people wearing name tags or something you can scan with your phone, I'm not going to know the right pronouns. So don't go prosecuting me if I fuck it up. Right.
Hello
and that's
there.
me as a far, far lefty saying this to people who are far more left than I am, apparently, to the point of fanaticism. So
I think the issue, though, is whether or not it is said in a derogatory way.
Mhm.
I think intention is part of it, rather than like if someone was being served by a waiter and they said, "Here you are, sir." You know,
Oh, I've had that done
you
to
know what I
me.
mean? You
I've
know
had
what I
that done
mean?
to me, yes.
That's like, it's not necessarily the wrong word as much as the wrong way to use it. It's meant to hurt somebody, and I think if you mean to hurt somebody, you can turn anything into an insult. But I
Yeah.
have another thing. If you are just too sensitive, and I do mean this in like and everyone can forgive me for this, but I mean, if you are so sensitive that you can't be riled, challenged, or like in deal with an insult or two, then you need to go back to 5th grade and get your ass kicked on the kindergarten playground a few times. Because
Okay.
little kids are so much more worse than adults a lot of times. I mean, they are out for freaking blood, these little fuckers.
well, and
And
one thing that I never understood, never made sense to me is when parents are saying, well, if you're being teased, just walk away. And I'm like, because they couldn't follow me?
Right. I've gotten the crap kicked out of me a few times, and especially in school, because I didn't know I was allowed to hit back. But once I got permission, that was different.
And Miriam, when we were talking about persecution over pronoun usage, I don't know if you have anything to say about that, because there was that bill in, was it Canada overall, or was it one of the provinces?
It's my home province, Ontario.
Yes, because
Really?
Logic and Greg, Armored Skeptic, were arguing over that one for a while, where I think it was Greg that thought you were going to get prosecuted for accidentally using the wrong pronoun, and that's not the case at all, is it?
I really need to take a look at that legislation because I'm not entirely familiar.
Okay.
Fair enough.
But I think that I think possibly federally we have human rights protection for your gender identity. So,
I mean,
Okay,
one of the issues I see with this whole like being prosecuted for being misgendered thing, I mean, we don't like allow people to be prosecuted for like having to suffer any other insult, right? I mean, someone walks over and says, "Hey, you're an asshole." Well, I can't prosecute them for that.
Sometimes I'd like to, but no, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
It just seems like
legislation.
Like it's basically like special pleading. In our case, we get to say that that's illegal. No. I mean, people can call you whatever the hell they want, and the only punishment they'll suffer is publicly. Like people will go, "Okay, you're a dick," and they'll get like they'll pay that price, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do not understand the way the political correctness climate has gone. But as I say, I'm old. I come from a different era, so
I think
we should get a few kids in here.
I think sometimes it's gone way too far. And, like, some people do get extremely sensitive. Sometimes I'm one of those people. I think like language is just so interesting. Like we were talking about there, at a certain point, Oriental was totally fine, and now it's not. I was just looking up in 1978, Edward Said wrote Orientalism, and I think that probably helped change the usage of the term Oriental to refer to people.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one. Something to look up.
I'm trying to think if there's anything someone could call me that would actually inspire that kind of like offended outrage. The sort of thing where I might be inclined to get out there with like signs and go protesting if someone called me that. And I can't really think of any. I mean, the worst way I might react to someone calling me a name is, "Oh, fuck you, you're a dick." Right? That's it. But I mean, I had a friend go off on me because I saw someone lose their temper, and I said, "Uh-oh, some snowflake's been triggered." And she goes, "Don't say triggered, because that's what happens with my PTSD. That's what triggered means." I'm like, okay, but I didn't really mean any offense, right? Because I don't know. It was weird. So.
Well, as my therapist keeps reminding me, we are not in charge of other people's reactions. Sometimes we're going to say something and we're going to piss people off when we didn't mean to. So.
Yeah.
I do that enough.
A lot of the time I do
mean choose your battles. I mean, a lot of people just want to choose every battle and, "Oh, you're gonna fit into the same Jello mold I am, or else you're gonna share my opinions. We're friends, so we have to be exact copies of each other," and blah blah blah. Boring. No. My answer to that is no. If I want a friend who is just like me, who never disagrees with me or whatever, I'll just talk to a mirror.
Well, I disagree with myself all the time, but I mean, it's no fun to be with someone who agrees with you all the time. There are certain fundamental things where I'm like, if we disagree on this one, go away. But there's other things where, I don't know. I mean, it's good to say, "I like this better." Well, I like this better. Well, here's the reasons, and doing that sort of thing. I mean,
it's called discussion.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
When I was more into gender therapy than I am now, I mean, when I was first coming out and when I was first trying to get cleared for hormone therapy, that sort of thing, I would actually tell my therapist, "Why aren't you disagreeing with me? Why aren't you challenging me? I want to know that my rationale is at least halfway valid for going ahead with this. But this whole client-centered thing, you know, whatever the client wants, that's getting on my nerves. You know, can you think of something, anything that would say, you know, are you doing the right thing? And I never got that.
I argue with my therapist weekly.
Well, I will say that, I mean, there's something you said about hormone therapy. I mean, there really is nothing more therapeutic than the moans of a whore. Sorry, I had to.
I
Every
need one of
time-
those, Kate.
Every time I hear the word hormone, that's where my brain goes. Cannot help it.
It
Well,
works.
yeah. How do you make a hormone? You don't pay her.
Mm.
That's an old one.
Just an aside, Kate, you would probably really enjoy Anglo-Saxon poetry then.
Would I?
They have a lot of kennings, like whale pool and things like that. That's the word for ocean. Different descriptive, lovely things that invoke different words. It's quite lovely, but that's beside the point.
Anglo-Saxon poetry. I may look.
Is that anything like Vogon poetry?
There's a lot of kennings in it.
You know, I actually thought it'd be fun once to try to write like an entire story, like literally a narrative, like some narrative fiction, but do it with nothing but limericks. And I thought that was going to be fun. But after about the 7th or 8th limerick, it started to feel really annoying. Just the rhythm got really annoying because it was so repetitive. And I don't know. It was a good idea, but it did not work. It did not work.
Too bad.
Dante's Inferno is written in stanzas of 3. That must have been very difficult.
I'm fighting my way through that right now.
I love Dante's Inferno. It's freaking funny.
It is so difficult for me to read because of the way it's written.
Read it out loud.
Okay, that might help.
It's
sort
the
of
same
like
thing. If anyone is trying to read Shakespeare and they don't get it, or they're trying to read Anglo-Saxon and they don't get it, figure out how to pronounce it like it's a different set of sounds. But once you get the phonetics in, you can enjoy it. And
sort of like
part of that
Finnegan's
process is just like doing the same thing when you were a kid. Read it out loud. It helps.
So what, sort of like Finnegan's Wake?
Yeah.
I love. Well, wait, no, hold on. I like the song Finnegan's Wake. Never mind.
Okay.
It's completely different than the book.
Yeah. Most things are.
Everybody, I think I need to get going because I'm doing another stream pretty soon, and I have
you and I both. I was going to start asking if people wanted to wind down and if they wanted to say anything about their future plans, immediate future, or however you want to do that. Why don't you start off, Miriam?
Sure. I'm in the next 35 minutes, I'm going to be doing a stream with Lady Girl Person about relationship stuff.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it too.
That sounds wonderful.
Besides that, next Saturday I'm going home to Toronto, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Yay!
And just having a little break before my 2nd year of the program.
And Kate, what's up with you?
Well, I don't have any immediate plans that are different from what I've always done. I mean, I'm going to look for more religious videos, debunk the crap out of them, work on some of my animation stuff, try to get some exercise in between. It is same old, same old. Let's see, what is it? The 24th of this month, Ready Player One finally comes out on DVD and Blu-ray, so I'm going to be watching that a fair bit. But until then, nothing really happens. Nothing's in my schedule till September. So,
awesome.
Same old, I guess.
Okay, and as for me, I also have another stream coming up in about 35 minutes. My evening show, my Sunday evening show with NCG Studios. I'm not at all remembering what we're going to talk about. It's unfortunate that many times we don't get the topic until 5 minutes before airtime. However, Sunday the 29th on the evening show, Aaron Ra is going to be back. He's going to be talking about evolution. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Aaron again. And say again, Faye?
I said yay.
And
Oh,
I said
okay.
nice.
Okay, it was Miriam rather than Faye that I was hearing. And I would like to talk to you folks here on the panel if we'd like to continue this stream sort of thing and what we would like to do with it if we would like to continue it. I certainly would like to. I'll put that ahead. And perhaps, you know, when this is done, we can talk amongst ourselves and think about what we may or may not want to do with this.
Well, I enjoy doing these Sunday shows. Obviously, we're going to have to come up with new topics because we can't keep talking about this one forever. But
all right, I have one in mind. Perhaps we could talk about that one. There was something that recently appeared where people were complaining about pedophiles wanting to be included in the LGBT movement, which, by the way, I'm going to say it right now, with the research I've done, is a bunch of crap.
It sounds like it.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it's a whole bunch of right-wing crap, but we could perhaps go into that if we wanted to, or we could. So it would be, I mean, if we wanted to do it next week, if we wanted to do it in 2 weeks, we can figure that one out.
I mean, right now I'm already thinking of shit to say. So yeah, I'd like to do that one.
All right, that sounds good. Let's mark our calendars once we figure out how to mark them. So yeah, to let those of us who are doing the other streams do the other streams. If we have nothing else to say, perhaps I can close this down. And I want to thank everybody who has been listening in, for listening in. If you like it, come on back into the future and let other people know what we're doing. And we're going to try to make things interesting for them. And as a final, say again, Kate.
I do have one other thing I'd like to say.
Yes, dear.
Rutabaga.
All right. I haven't had one of those in ages.
Oh,
Sorry, I just, yeah. Anyway, go on.
But okay, being the clock time that it is, I guess what I will say is I recently discovered Bill Anders as well as Jim Lovell. Thanks a lot, troops. See you on the other side. Thank you very much for watching. Good night.
good night.
Bye.